Hello, everyone, and welcome to
You started it.
Perfect Bound Podcast.
Commit to it.
About anything and everything comic book and comic book related. I'm your host, Ben Lawrence, and with me, as always, is my lovely panel.
Why?
Nicole Lamb.
Hi.
Hello.
Are we recording now?
Okay.
Yes.
We are. Hello, friends. Welcome once again to the Perfect Bound Podcast. This is a podcast all about anything and everything comic books and comics related, brought to you by the Panel Jumper and Comic Extension. My name's Ben. With me, as always, is Nicole Lamb.
Hello.
Chris Casso.
I like both versions of this thing that happened.
Cole Hornaday.
Laughing. I think he starts like 25% of the podcasts with chuckling.
Well, and it's all a ruse because you know I'm not that happy a person.
I always try
all masked.
to start the show right when you're like out of breath.
Yeah.
Because you're giggling too much.
Wheezing.
It's called interlapping. We learned it in acting school.
Classically trained.
Classically trained.
Classically trained. He's got the PhD to prove his acting.
It's
prowess.
only an MFA.
It's only an MFA. It's an MF and A. If I may.
That's precisely. Moving on.
No, let's stay here and talk about how much money you owe to graduate school.
No, that's where I was going to go next, right? Yeah. Because I'm that predictable. Oh,
I have a
die
friend.
alone.
I have a friend who graduated from NYU Film School, and we were working on a project together, and he like said something like industry lingo, and he's like, did you get that? That's a $10,000 word right there. I'm like, oh, now I know what graduate school is. All right. Anyway, let's talk about comics, huh?
Sure.
We gotta.
So
Yes.
there's a new publisher called AHOY, or maybe AHOY Comics, but AHOY is in all caps, so I think you're supposed to yell it when you say it. It's
Just consider yelling.
I can't just do the Mr. Burns. Oh, hoy.
AHOY. This is a new publisher launching this September, this month as we speak. Actually, as this episode airs, September will be last month. With a creative lineup including Grant Morrison, Mark Russell, and Nocenti Tom Pyre, and they all basically ask a simple question. Shouldn't you want a little more from your comic books? Now, it's founded by journalist Hart Seeley, but each release will be basically a comic book magazine. It'll feature a full-length lead story along with backup material, including cartoons, prose, and even poetry. And so my question to all y'all is, do we want all that in our comic books?
Not really.
Not for me.
All right, moving on.
I hate poetry.
This was a great
have no
podcast.
soul.
Well, but you know, when I first read the article, I was intrigued by actually a couple of titles. I'm like, I did go, interesting. But also, you know, several publishers over the last couple of decades have tried to do these sort of perfect bound, floppy, either anthology collections or cross-gen.
Yeah.
Who did those weird things with, like, they had the individual comics and then they were, at the same time, they were simultaneously compiled. How did that go?
I remember them doing some weird experiments on some compiling like multiple number ones and then throw some extra stuff in there.
Yeah, and they really did think they were the wave of the future, and it was a really rough and ready experiment.
Do you remember like when they did the Frank Frazetta magazine? They the same experiment style, like just magazine size. Like here's some comics, here's some prose, here's some photography, whatever, you know.
And I was wondering, it's like, had the comic book publishing industry gone a different way, or, you know, why do certain publishing formats stick and survive? Because it is a rough and tumble marketplace where, you know, nature red in tooth and claw, you know. And these are frequently laudable ideas and worthy experiments, but, you know, they're pricey on the publisher's side. And, you know, if fans aren't going to buy them, it's all over and it turns into a speedy embarrassment. And CrossGen went bankrupt super duper fast.
And then Marvel bought them up.
Yeah, and they left a lot of people stranded financially, if I remember. I think there's a ton of artists that didn't get paid. You know, so there's that flip side of trying to take that kind of risk. But,
it's. I understand the appeal to having a lot of that stuff. For me personally, every time Alan Moore tries to shove his poetry in the back of a book, I'm like,
well, that's Alan
moving
Moore,
on.
though.
Yeah, I know.
well, we're just not really literary minded
It's like a non-consensual open mic night or something.
Yes, exactly.
I did not consent to this.
No, it's one of those things of like sometimes I enjoy a little bit of extra prose in the book, but it's got to be like give me what I really came for, the comic first, and then there's the optional last couple pages.
Right.
Otherwise I will go buy a book most of the time.
I think it's hard to. I'm sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
I'm with you. If I'm reading a comic and there's like prose in it, I usually skip it.
Right.
Well, and the worst thing is if the prose is in the middle of the book, so it's part of the core story, or first thing, and you're literally hit a brick wall.
Rick Remender.
Yeah, it's that was my question, was like, how do you guys feel about having to shift gears like that? Because I find it really annoying. And I got to tell you, all the prose that Alan Moore would stick in the back of his books, I frequently never get back to. Like, bless your heart, you read all of the prose in the back of Providence. I mean, I tried, I'm like...
And I will say it's worth it, but sometimes they punish you extra because, like, I'm going to make it in the fancy cursive or something, and you're just like, no, just give me good size.
Or it's like written in dialect or something.
Oh, dialect's the worst thing ever.
Harlan Ellison's Dream Quarter, that was something he always promised was, I'm going to have all these industry people adapt my well-known stories, but then there's going to be a new original piece of prose in the back. And I really didn't care. I love to read, but I didn't. It's actually hard for me to shift gears to go from being visually appreciating something with text, than to. It's almost like it was like hard to shift my imagination, my whatever creative aspect of your brain you're using between reading prose and reading a comic book, and it was annoying, and it was a brick wall for me.
Yeah.
And I don't think it works. I don't think I'm alone in having that.
There was a 4-issue weekly that came out that Alex DeCampia was working on called Twisted Romance, and that had a mixture of comic books and almost like a fan fiction kind of thing around a thematic thing, with kind of alternative sexuality stuff. And I skipped past the prose because it was a bit of a brick wall, and I was also kind of in a time crunch, like wanting to get as many comics under my belt before New Comic Book Day, the next day. And I was just like, read the comics and I'm done, because I think it is a switch gear for me. It's like, I'm not as great of a comprehensive reader, so prose takes me a little bit longer, and comic books are good because it gives me instant context, and I can just roll with it. So when I have to get into prose, then I'm just like,
See, I always wish there would be some editor's note somewhere saying, like, you really should read this part, because otherwise we'll skip it for whatever reason. And like, so example, go ahead.
Highlight the important part.
Part. Like, example, in the Transformer comics, there's they actually shoved in a whole bunch of prose that I thought was the letters pages, and I skipped. And at some point, they actually revealed a major plot point, and I glossed over it so fast. And when like it was relevant later on in the story, I was like, man, giant robots, they found a way to do the thing. And it's just like, but it turned out there was a whole prose story that I missed, written by the main writer, that actually filled in a plot point. And I'm like, oh, I just completely missed you.
Yeah.
I didn't think to look for you because you're Transformers. Why would you have prose? So like just a big red letter arrow from the editor saying like, no, dumbass, read this.
Yes. Like,
don't ignore me.
You're not done yet. Keep going. Yeah.
So Hart Seeley, the founder of AHOY Comics, says, I've come to believe you can speak truth through the fundamental telling of stories, and that's what AHOY is going to do. I believe we can take the best of literature and the best of comics, put them in a blender, and come up with something new, exciting, and, most of all, true. Now, it's an admirable goal.
Yes.
And it certainly has a place on the bookshelves, but it's weird calling it a comic book if you have all this literature. And now it sounds like I'm calling saying comics aren't literature. We can talk about the semantics of that word. But it just sounds like the majority of us here, meaning all of us, don't want a lot of literature.
Well, I'm sorry to say that it is an experiment that's already failed, and that's why I was kind of surprised to see that he was attempting this. I looked over the premise. The wise thing is that they're not ongoing. They're like Can you pull out some of the titles for me?
Yeah, there's The Wrong Earth, written by Tom Peyer with art, or written by Tom Peyer and Jamal Engel.
That one I actually want to read.
That one should be
because
interesting.
It's actually an idea that once upon a time I wanted to be a comic book writer, and that was an idea that I toyed with, was like a superhero meeting his evil other and having them swap places. And I think that's the gist of it.
At least that's what I get from the cover art.
Yeah, but there's another one about the kitties on the ship.
That's Captain Ginger.
Right, and the premise is,
I don't know.
I think
Space
it's
cats?
no. I thought they're on a pirate ship. or
Oh, maybe
something.
they're pirate cats? I
Yeah,
don't know. I
that
don't
like
know.
have evolved into
it's a-
humanoid cats.
It's a 4-issue series about a spaceship piloted by
spaceship.
cats after
Okay.
the human race has died out.
All right, I'm really sorry, but that's the character Cat from Red Dwarf, and we've done that already.
It is the character.
Yeah.
It is Cat.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they have High Heaven, which is, I don't remember. That one looked okay to me.
It looked Vertigo-ish circa 1990.
Yeah, maybe that's why I was like,
Right.
eh.
I think the one with the multiple reality thing is supposed to be what if essentially Adam West switched places with Christopher Nolan Batman. Like one's Dark Earth, one's Happy Earth, and they get flipped. And
Okay.
so bad things
Yeah.
happen.
So
Yeah.
I still am intrigued by
Yeah.
that. I will probably read that.
And so, The Wrong Earth is going to include prose by Grant Morrison and material from Shannon Wheeler, Frank Camuso, and Paul Constant. And people listening to us in Seattle will remember Paul Constant as the old literature reviewer from The Stranger.
We will.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've
Good on
talked to
you.
him before, I think,
Oh,
yeah.
this is a new name to me.
If
This
it
great.
is the same Paul Constant.
All right.
I think
cool.
it is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Captain Ginger. It does. The cute cats, though. I mean, I like.
I mean, you know, man.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, cats. I mean,
like
you can't say
cats.
no to cats,
Right,
but you
right.
could just be like, go over there, cats.
Right. So, and then Rob Salkowitz.
Oh, we totally glazed over the Edgar Allan Poe thing, by the way, which looks like a hot trash
Yeah,
fire.
Edgar
but-
Allan Poe's Snifter of Terror. And then it's got this Poe's Frankenstein cover art. Pose.
I just don't know
Poe
what
as
it
Frankenstein.
what it is.
Was that the one they're pitching as like
exactly.
Drunk History meets?
Meets Tales from the Crypt?
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So anyway, Ahoy wants to give us more with our comics. We don't necessarily want more with our comics. But Rob Salkowitz has opinions. He wrote a guest column for ICV2.com called "Is the Middlebrow Comics Glut Sustainable?" And I don't remember what his conclusion is, but I don't think he thinks it is.
Right. So we should probably try and define middlebrow first to get the context.
Please do.
So this is a specific problem that we at the store have been feeling, is that there's a lot of good books out there. Maybe not a lot of great books, but a lot of like solid, really good books. And you get a lot of new publishers coming out in the last 5 years. You've got Catalyst Prime, and you've got, help me out here, my brain suddenly died.
Aftershock is pretty new.
Yeah. You've got Arcana.
Yeah. Antarctic Press, or have they been around?
They've been around for a while.
Oh, okay.
But so the thing is, we are actually in a golden age of like a lot of variety, and a lot of variety that's all really good. You know, it's solid. It's worth checking out. We can't afford it. And how do you choose it? Especially when you're fighting against Marvel and DC making more of a glut with every crossover. And so a lot of stuff is just going to get left on the wayside because you just can't find it all. And we have more and more new publishers popping up, and they all actually sound pretty good. And so the article kind of points out like middlebrow's kind of, it's not like the lowbrow art style that a lot of people kind of mistook comics for as just being sort of trash, and it's not high art. It's not, you know, the pinnacle of what art can be. It's just really good, solid genre material, good sci-fi, good horror, and you know we can't order all of it, and so a lot of it won't get a chance.
Yeah.
The stuff that we were just talking about from Ahoy, I ordered the one by Tom Peyer.
You ordered like 4 copies of Wrong Earth.
Yeah. You know, like, give you an idea, I don't have that much confidence.
Yeah.
Because the thing is just that if I don't sell them, I'm stuck with them.
Yeah.
And I can't return them. And a couple of the other titles I'm just not going to order. Catalyst Prime is a very progressive comic company that's trying to put different characters of color or of disability in the roles of superheroes. I love the idea of it. Gail Simone's pushing it hard. She's going to be in charge of the brand, but I can't sell any on its own merit. I don't have people knocking on the door for it. So it's just like, it's nice that you're nice and that you're well done, but I can't do much with that right now, unfortunately.
So for you all as retailers, how do you see a solution to this? Should we just
it is Darwinian. It's survival of the fittest.
that's what I was gonna say. Do you just not order stuff?
Yeah, I don't have enough space.
Yeah.
Our new release wall can hold 250 unique items, and it's generally completely filled every week, and I'm struggling to get everything to fit on there.
Yeah.
And I have to make sure I order the stuff that I know will sell, and then I can take risks at certain things, and there's no math to those risks. And other than I can look at some previous sales or how much request I get for stuff.
Yeah.
And I've got like 1 or 2 pre-orders for a few of these AHOY books as an example. And that doesn't make me want to order 15 or 20. It makes me want to order 4 or 5.
Right.
And to give you an idea, the previews is about 450 pages of new releases with, multiple releases on the pages, just to let you know. That catalog is chock full.
Do you have to read that every month?
Yes.
A chunk of the job is going through that and trying to find the things, and then making sure I don't overlook anything that could be fantastic, and then just trying to figure out, like, did I already order this? What was the last number? Blah, 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 blah.
Okay, well, how much space nowadays is devoted to the bajillion cover variants?
No, it's too much.
Yeah,
That's part of the problem.
Okay,
Yeah.
So that was a realization that was making me sad. I'm like, okay, well, a lot of that shelf space that Chris has got to sacrifice are all these, 24 covers for whatever issue, and that's a saturation that has just surprised me. That's not come back to bite publishers in the rear ends yet. But we talked about it a couple of years ago, and you were like, no, I don't think it's going to happen. This is different. This is different from the hologram covers and that sort of thing.
Yeah. It's one of those things like Image Comics, it's all creator-owned material. A lot of these creators are choosing to release 5 to 6 covers for their first issues. And it's like, why? What about your book demands that? The Leviathan that you did at least had 3 or 4 covers, plus like exclusive store covers. It's just the way the market is right now.
And my deal is like, I don't understand why people care. I don't understand that because to me that's like Beanie Babies. It's like you're going to be stuck with all these multiple covers of a book you read once, but you got 7. It's just not a mindset I can appreciate. All I want to do is read the comic book.
And so there's no solution that you as a retailer can sort of propose, but it's just the market is going to have to weed out all these other publishers. But then when publishers go down, 2 more pop up.
Yeah.
So it's going to be
the Hydra.
Feels like it's going to be a constant struggle.
So here's a scary question about the paper tariffs.
Yeah.
And is that going to happen? And what that's going to do to the middlebrow, to the multiple covers, to all this oversaturation we're seeing.
I think it's a possibility because I was reading an article about a newspaper deciding to cut off some of its comic strips because they had to start cutting the fat because of the newsprint tariffs. And the thing is, newsprint is the part of the there's a publishing company called Arcana, and they make it a point that all their comics are on newsprint. If you check out their website, it says that bring newsprint back.
I think they're Alterna. Yeah, Alterna.
Sorry. Yeah. And so it's just like, man, if that hits hard, that's going to hit them, and that might nuke them out of the water.
That my concern is that will be the equalizer that we're looking at.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Is that
outside force?
Well, it's going to be a market force. But yeah, that may make the difference of all of these middle brow publishers who are doing good work, and that's going to turn it into nature red in tooth and claw.
Yeah. So So the market's going to shake out however it does.
Right.
But let's just say nothing changes. 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, we have all these different publishers. Marvel and DC are still at each other's throats, and in 10 years are both owned by the same mega corporation, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You as a reader have probably hit a ledge.
Yes.
So let's talk about your comic midlife crisis.
Good flow.
Nice segue, Ben. Nice job.
So what do you do when you've hit your comic book mid? Well, first of all, let's describe what a comics midlife crisis is. What is it?
Not everybody is buying a Corvette, but yeah.
Oh man, I wish I could. I would.
I know. I think, like, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you did the like whole event of Secret Wars and doing Convergence, I feel like that tipped you over the edge that you have not quite come back from, where you went too deep. You went too deep into tie-ins and crossovers and events that it burnt you out so much that it was hard to find joy again in comic books.
Looked into the time portal.
Yeah.
The abyss winked back at me.
The abyss said, "Neener, neener, neener."
And so since then, you've been reading primarily manga.
Yeah, primarily manga. I mean, I'll read some Marvel and DC because I kind of mostly feel like I have to.
Yeah.
That's the
Kinda
thing.
like a job.
There's a certain point where reading comic books is more of a job for me. I mean, to give you an idea of like trying to figure out what to review tonight for this episode, I was just like, man, do I pick up one of these new Marvel DC things? Oh, wait, here's a brand new book from a European creator that has no words. I'm going for it. So multiple reasons for that one. But
We were making jokes about which one is the fastest read to try to review. So,
And I'm jealous of you guys because you have access to the store, and every time a new podcast recording comes up, I'm like, okay, what? I'm going to have to pick up a new title, or at least the first issue of something.
I still do that.
And I have to buy it, or I need to get something from the library. So that's how.
Yeah.
And that process is actually kind of burning me out because. You guys are great. You offer me, you offer books that I can check out, and I do go to the library. But I got to tell you, and I think I've expressed this before, before Ben asked me to start doing the Panel Jumper web series, asked me if I was interested in exploring this, I was just about done. I was reading probably 4 comic books a month, and I just didn't care anymore. And every time there was a reboot where it was an opportunity to jump on, I jumped off, and I was done. And now I'm like, well, I'll test the waters on this because I want to have something to talk about on the web series. But, superhero books are actually kind of embarrassing to me anymore. I think they represent a level of toxic masculinity that I don't want to participate in anymore. And I'm done. I'm burnt out. And I also, there are no superhero books from my past that I will recommend to anybody anymore, particularly women. And I look back at the books that I used to recommend, and I'm like, wow, I had some really, really faithful girlfriends, who said, I will read this book because you like to read it. And I look back on those books now, and I'm like, God, those are just grotesque.
yeah, so I think the midlife crisis just really comes down to in an oversaturated market,
Yes,
or if
yes.
you've been in it long enough, you've seen the gimmicks, you've seen them time and again, and you just get tired of it. Or it's one of those things like Chris and I make jokes all the time. Oh, yeah, it was good, but good isn't actually good enough now because we're reading so much stuff, so much content. It's like, how do you find joy after you've had this burnout, this crash, or this midlife crisis in comics?
Because it makes you cynical.
It does.
That's one of my particular burnouts is I can't quite enjoy archetypes or analogs anymore. Everybody freaking loves Black Hammer. I wish I could care. I will try again. But I'm just...
At this point, if it's not working for you, don't force it. Because
then you'll
right
resent
now,
it.
Yeah.
exactly. But even because I do enjoy Black Hammer, but you know what? Lemire is doing dumb things. He's oversaturating that little corner of the universe he's making. He's got his spin-offs. He's got his also ran books. And I'm like, you're going to turn me off here real soon. You're going to recreate the reason why I didn't like... I was losing faith in the genre to begin with.
2 different spinoffs at the same time.
Yeah. And I didn't want to keep reading the Quantum Age, but I guess I subscribed to it.
I mean, it's a limited, so there's
is a
that.
limited,
Like when something ends, sometimes that makes you
know
the
what,
happiest.
Nicole? Limited. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No,
What were
go
you
ahead,
saying?
go ahead.
Well, but but when I realize something's going to be a limited, I will heave a sigh of disgust because I could wait for the trade.
Yeah.
Because limiteds
Yeah.
are going to take up more. Remember, I got 55 file boxes I don't know what to do with right now. And I don't need to keep stuffing more in there. There's no more room in my apartment. And I'd rather go the trade route. See what I did there? Get it from the library, or a trade's going to take up less space and it's loanable and I can get more mileage out of it because I can loan it to a friend.
Yeah.
But like
never see it
miniseries,
again.
I will probably not read the Quantum Age miniseries again.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that burnout?
Yeah. Because it
So-
surprises me that you are actually at that place because
Well, so my jam was never superheroes, but I
Right.
did get into them, and I do have a great love for them. But I do burn out on their gimmicks pretty quickly.
sure.
So, what did you ask me now?
How do you handle the burnout?
How do I handle the burnout?
Yes.
So what happens frequently here on a magical Tuesday night is that we all kind of come up with a fan fiction while we're doing the poll. And our fan fiction tends to be around superhero stuff, but it's them doing very mundane tasks. It's like them going and having a picnic and having a great time. And of course, there's friendship and romance and all sorts of delights. And I think that Chris and myself tend towards manga because it does deal with the mundane, it has a character depth to it, and it brings a level of joy or despair, depending on what you're reading. But it takes on making a comic book in a different format, in a different way, structurally, dialogue, with characters, and it's refreshing. You get to leave the American comics to the side, and you get to enjoy these wonderful delights that manga brings. And so I think for me, I mix things up. I go read my thing that's just sugary sweet, or I read my thing that's super, super dark, and then maybe I'll try a superhero comic that I love. And I change things up, constantly. And if I'm really feeling like, oh, God, you are so hard to read, I don't want to, then I just don't. And I either get to it or I don't. Mm-hmm. And I really give myself the space to be able to switch it up. I have about 5 stacks of comics around me at all times, unfortunately. So I get to choose a lot of different options. Did you have something that you wanted to add before I was going to change gears?
All good.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I wanted to share a snippet of my husband's life because we met here at Comics Dungeon. And we share a love of comic books, clearly. And when I met him, it was in the wonderful world that Hickman was creating, in like Avengers and stuff like that. That was all kind of kicking off. And Jeff Parker was around doing cool things with Hulk and stuff like that. And it was a real golden age for my husband and for his reading. And over time, he's just lost the luster. He's a Marvel fanboy. That's where his heart is. And they were just losing him time and again with the reboots, with the events, with hollowing out their flagship heroes, with bringing in these other analogs that he couldn't quite relate to, and he was just struggling to find those fantastical stories again. And Immortal Hulk came out, and it was one of those things that all of us here are like, William, read Immortal Hulk, because he loves Hulk. Hulk is his guy. He's read him for so long, and we try to push him time and again, and then finally in previews there is a picture of Hulk fighting Sasquatch from the Alpha Flight. He is a big Sasquatch. And that's when my husband started pawing at my comic stack when I was coming home. And he just is like, you better bring me that thing. He started getting real serious.
Did he Hulk out on you?
He would have if I didn't bring it home.
Did he Sasquatch on you?
He didn't have Sasquatch on me. No. That's a Markiplier reference in case anyone's like, why are we saying this so weird?
Wow.
He played a Sasquatch game and he said Sasquatch in weird ways. Anyway, this man is so impressed by Al Ewing and the way that he writes, and he's followed him for a long time, that he actually wrote a letter to the man about how excited he was about the series. And I think that even though he's still not really reading much of anything else, even like Fantastic Four, he's kind of like, meh, I guess I'll read Marvel 2-in-1. He does enjoy that, but he is serious about Immortal Hulk. So sometimes it just comes around to waiting to have that person line up with your guy to then like get back on the ball. Now, again, like I said, he doesn't really read anything else, but he wrote a letter. He's never written a letter in his life. So, I think that if you're experiencing a burnout, just keep exploring, keep seeing what's out there. And even if there's another title coming out that you're like, yeah, I don't know if I care, just at least try it. Try the first issue, and see if you like it, especially if it's like your guy. Because it might be good. And if it's trash, that's fine. Then you can just shelve it.
Then the tides will turn.
Exactly. The tides will turn. So
it's kind of my comparison, at least between Marvel and DC, is always similar to like wrestling comparison back in the day when there was WWF, when it was F, and WCW. One would suck for a year, the other one would be great. And then the next year, the other one would suck. And then flip and flop and flip and flop. It's like clockwork with Marvel and DC.
it really is.
One's stronger for a year, and then the other one's just like, meh, okay, whatever.
Interesting.
Yeah, so just if you wait long enough, somebody will take over a title, especially, well, you don't even have to wait that long. Marvel will relaunch it in 6 months,
Right, and because of that, I am now the middle of the road because I don't care either way.
Right.
I read a couple of DC books. I read a couple of Marvel books. Both do such a good job of being inconsistent in the quality of what they do. But you know what? The movies are changing how we see all these things. And I'm older than the majority of readers, so I fill a weird niche, and I don't like to be part of the niche that privileged white heteronormative males fill in the comic book industry. I don't want to be in that club. I don't like those people. I'm sorry. I'd rather be in the club with you guys. So because I actually learn things from you guys.
But it also speaks to the material you like, because my husband is in your bracket.
Yes,
he
he
is
is.
a niche guy.
Yes, and I like Immortal Hulk too.
And he is of that time.
It's just not what I thought it was going to be. And Chris delivered me from my ignorance.
But I think for him, like the lack of longevity in a lot of stuff,
Yes.
the lack of like caring about what previous writers did, making that still stay alive if it's a cool idea. A lot of things that some of the people I named have done, who have had threads throughout their series over time, and it's paid off.
Right.
Yeah, I think that is what's really devastated it, And it makes it hard to be like, oh, is the end of the world again?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Tuesday. Okay, I guess I care.
Oh, you
It's
got
like,
replaced
you
by
know
an
what?
evil doppelganger?
Just stop,
Oh.
go to a coffee shop, talk about your feelings a little bit, man.
Yeah.
And then maybe go punch some bad guys. Yeah, you're recharged. I don't know. That's probably not really the solution.
Do you remember what it was I was mentioning the other day? Like I want a series of Captain America traveling across the country.
Yes.
Because he's a man without a country again, and just stops at every restaurant and tries out the food.
Because it mixes your manga cooking with your superheroes.
Like, give me something like that,
And Steve would probably meet interesting people and have interesting conversations as well, if you wanted to throw that in.
What if Bruce Banner's next run is of trying to get anger management and people just suggest different sports to him? Stress relief, so you get the Hulk trying baseball for a while.
Have you tried hockey?
Yeah,
Hulk would be great at baseball.
Yes.
Oh, no, he should run a cat cafe.
There you go.
I think the lesson we're learning is that it's okay to have a comics midlife crisis. It's okay to stop reading for a while if that's what it means to when you pick it back up again, or if you find something like an Immortal Hulk, you rediscover that love and why you started reading comics in the first place.
And it helps to write fan fiction. Go publish it on Tumblr.
Absolutely, fan fiction.
Indeed.
Throw it on the internet if you want. That's fine.
Are no editors at all when you post something to your own Tumblr. Go wild.
They may even make a movie out of it.
Yeah.
Twilight. Anyway, let's move on to book report, everybody. And Chris Cassell, what do you got for us this week?
So I chose something that's very quick to read. It's called A Sea of Love, and it is by, let's see if I can butcher these names, written by Wilfred Lupano and illustrated by Gregory Panacione. Sounds okay. So essentially, the story is a old, tiny fisherman gets lost at sea, and goes on an irreverent journey trying to find his way back home. And in the meantime, his wife is trying to find him and goes on her own irreverent journey to try and do that. And it is utterly sweet and adorable. He makes friends with this one derpy seagull that got its head stuck in the plastic that six packs come in. And then he saves it and feeds it sardines, which he hates sardines, but his wife always forces him to take. And they turn out to be the thing that saves his life many times. And that's it. There's not much else to describe about the plot. It's just whimsical. I love the art style, and the wife at one point is trying to go to a fortune teller to try and figure out where the husband is, and the fortune teller makes a pancake, eats the pancake, takes a chunk of the pancake out, and then spits out the other half, and it forms the face of Che Guevara. And it turns out that the wife thinks she has to go to Cuba, and later on she meets Castro, and more hijinks ensue, and she becomes a internet celebrity, and it's just very, very adorable.
And this is all done without words.
All done without words.
No verbal narrative whatsoever. It's all images.
Wow.
Yep. And so it's a masterclass in storytelling by that feat, and it's a nice little package. It's $25, which you think might be too much for no words, but it's a good dense read because you just kind of linger on the pages, and sometimes you have to really try and figure out like what are they trying to say between those couple of panels, and so it's something that makes you stop and think about what you're looking at. So and this is by Lion Forge Entertainment, part of the Magnetic Collection. That's them trying to bring in as many different European and other pieces of work. Highly recommend it. It is fantastic. A Sea of Love.
Cool. Thank you, Chris. Cole Hornaday, what do you got for us?
Well, speaking of burnout and midlife crisis in comics, I read the volume 2 and 3 of Kaiju Max by Xander Cannon, the most stupendous book that you're not reading and you need to do so yesterday.
Seriously, yes.
As I mentioned last week, I've been really immersing myself in kaiju stories, and I'm actually hitting some severe writer's block on writing this next episode of the Panel Jumper, and it's making me kind of anxious. Because I probably have immersed myself too deeply in what I want to talk about. Starting with, where did we get our kaiju stories from? Well, obviously we start with Godzilla or Gojira, the original Godzilla film, not to be confused with the Americanized version, Godzilla King of the Monsters. Gojira was a truly powerful film that talked about, in a metaphorical context, of American atomic aggression on Japanese people. And Gojira clearly stands for the atomic bomb, but it's also reflective of us, and trying to talk about how we use kaiju as metaphors and an aspect of othering in our metaphorical storytelling, but when that other becomes us. And that's what Kaiju Max succeeds at, is that Cannon gives us these, in case you're not familiar, Kaiju Max is basically Monster Island. It's a prison where they keep all of these very familiar monster archetypes, giant monster archetypes, on this island, and it becomes essentially a prison drama. And that's the beauty of the story, is that these deceptively simple and quaint illustrations and these incredibly powerful and gut-wrenching stories. My favorite, and there's several plot lines happening at once, and I'm not going to try to give you the overview of volume 2 and 3. 2 was published in 2017, and volume 3, season 3 was published just this last year. But my favorite ongoing storyline is that of Electrogore. And Electrogore is a friendly, or at least an approachable and available enough kaiju that you're kind of puzzled why he's in prison. He's a family man. Actually, you don't even know if he is a he or if they are they. But Electrogore was thrown into prison for, I think, eating like a nuclear power plant, because all of these kaiju all eat either radioactive waste or power plants or things like that.
They essentially kind of profiled him. That's the trick.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but Electrogore leaves behind two children, abandons them in a cave. And it is really, really heartbreaking because these two baby monsters are stuck to fend for themselves. And all Electrogor wants to do is escape from prison and get back to his children. I'm going to say he. I don't know if there's a gender distinction in the story. I don't remember. And so in season 3, he finally gets back to the children. And it's a very clear metaphor for what happens to families when the parent goes to prison. And by the time Electrogor finds the children, they have been fending for themselves. The daughter has aged considerably, come into her own as a kaiju and a powerful, powerful monster that's actually out of control. Because why? Because she's had no guidance from any parental figure. And it's pretty clear metaphors that are happening there, and it's really powerful. And I highly recommend this series. And I'm trying to figure out how to weave in what I want to talk about it in our next episode of the Panel Jumper. Just trying to figure out how to do that just yet, and it doesn't help that the story's so darn good, and that I'm kind of stuck trying to cherry pick what to talk about.
Yeah, there's so many different levels of just social commentary about the prison system and what it does to people.
Yep.
It's so good.
It's very good.
And season 4 just started in singles recently.
And it's about the ladies' island.
I've been
So
curious about that.
There isn't going to be gender distinctions on that.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Cool. I wait for the trades because of the argument I posed earlier. So.
Okay, Kaiju Max, seasons 2 and 3. Thank you, Cole. And finally, Nicole, what do you got for us?
Oh, I was so enraptured. I thought I had already gone.
No, sorry, baby.
I was like,
Your
what
turn.
am I? Okay. So a brand new comic book, a #1 that just came out from Image is Bully Wars. It's written by Scotty Young, and the art is by Aaron Conley. Colors by Jean-Francis Bellew. I know that this person worked with Scotty Young on the Rocket Raccoon series that was with Jake Parker. So this is another time where Scotty Young is taking the writer's seat as opposed to the artist's seat. And the premise of this book is kind of in the story, in the title. It's in a land called Rottenville. And
That's where I grew up.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate. And the kids are going from middle school to high school, and they're going to this new high school where there are a lot of bullies. There are so many bullies that there are tiers of bullies, and there's a bully war that, who will win is the best bully kind of thing. And there's this nerdy kid who is got, all his books, and he's ready for everything. He's got a couple of friends, and they're just talking about, the school and all that stuff. And they've got this one guy who's always been bullying them, and he shows up and he's all like, I'm totally ready to bully everybody in the school, and comes to find out, rude awakening, he is the lowest on the totem pole as far as the bullies are concerned, and he is going to need some help in order to to be where he wants to be. He's finding himself being bullied, and it definitely there was an article in one of the Image Plus issues that were coming out with previews, which is an article series that tells you about like different things that are coming out, a little bit more information on it. And Scotty Young had talked about it, saying that there's definitely going to be commentary about bullying in it, but there's a little bit more character depth to it, that it's both sides of the coin, people who are bullied and the bullies. So it's going to explore that a little bit more. Somewhat in a neutral fashion, but also maybe take some like low blows when they can. I don't know, something along those lines. So it's kind of an interesting premise. The art it reminds me of like a Garbage Pail Kid sort of scenario, not completely, but it's got a very strange style to it. And, gum looks extra gummy and stuff like that, So it's an interesting premise. If it sounds interesting to you and you want to jump in, and I would definitely recommend it. I don't know what else to say about it, actually. I think it's one of those things that it was like, yeah, you're fine. Yeah, and I have it under my belt, and I can tell people about it now, and there you go. It's definitely not something I've read before, so that's something.
I've been really curious because I have been wondering, how do we tell bully stories? Because I've been, backtracking across personal history a lot lately, and realizing that so much of my love of comic books came as a result of being bullied because I needed to have some type of power in my life, and that male power fantasy was what did that for me. But now, how do you tell those stories successfully? How do you neutralize the damage that bullies have done? How do you recreate the future going forward? Because I do think there are a lot of really progressive things happening in public schools to neutralize that. And it makes me cry because I wish that had been in place. Those stopgap measurements have been in place when I was a child.
Well, I think that this is definitely going to be a title that doesn't go like one way or the other.
Oh yeah.
Because there are characters in this who have been bullied and might step up and help bullies, and the bullies might help the people who they've been bullying. It might be something along those lines. There's going to be character growth. People are going to grow and learn and maybe bond. I don't know. Friendships might happen. This is all speculation.
Okay.
All speculation.
Would you keep reading that book?
Yeah, I mean, to see where it goes, because I did read, when I read the article, it was enough to be like, I want to see where you go with this, because it seems like it's very easy to go one way with it, you know. So if they do something interesting with it, I would be interested.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Bully Wars. Thank you, Nicole. Well, that is Book Report. That is our show. Coming up is quiz time. But before we go, I want to tell you that the Perfect Bound podcast is brought to you by The Panel Jumper. See everything Cole Hornaday and I do at thepaneljumper.com, as well as Comic Extension here at 319 Northeast 45th Street in beautiful downtown Wallingford, or 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at comicextension.com. Subscribe to the show on iTunes or however you get your podcasts at perfectboundpodcast.com. Send us an email, perfectboundpodcast@gmail.com. And now, friends, get your quiz hats on. It's quiz time. And this week, the questions come to us from me.
What? No.
Indeed. All right, this one's called By the Hoary Hosts of Hoggoth. When Stan Lee scripted early Doctor Strange titles, he often made up gibberish invocations for Strange to recite. Later, other writers then went back to those old stories and gave more life and depth to Lee's original gibberish. I have 5 sets of 3 Doctor Strange invocations. 2 out of the 3 I made up. See if you can identify which one the good doctor actually invoked. Hat tip to CBR.com. This is where I got all the true ones. Okay, first set. By the arms of Argyle. By the fangs of Farala. By the feet of Farundi. Which is the true invocation?
What was the second one?
By the fangs of Farala.
The third one is...
By the feet of Farundi. We're not going to spend this much time on every single one.
We are.
I'm going to say...
I think... Go ahead.
Go. No, you go.
No, you go. No, I don't
you
want to
go.
be the jackass.
Say them both at the same time.
2. The second one.
Cole, what is your answer?
I was going to say number 1 because Argyle.
2 is the correct one,
Oh,
by the
nice
fangs of
job.
Farala. Farala made his debut as an invocation during the acclaimed Steve Englehart Frank Brunner run. Invoking the fangs gave Strange a variety of abilities, from protection to a powerful attack to teleportation. Second set. By the rings of Ragador. By the sphere of solemnity. By the cubes of Kartash.
So this is which one is the real thing?
Yeah, which one is the real
The
one?
number 1 is the real one.
Indeed. Not much is known about Ragador, just that he was a mystic who likely lived on Earth sometime in the past before ending up in his own dimension. He is best known for his rings, which work as powerful binding spells. Most often there are 7 rings of Ragador, but sometimes Strange refers to them in a different fashion. Alright, third set. By the stars of Sorin. By the moons of Munopor. By the lights of Lipditch.
Number 2 is the real McCoy.
Munopor was one of the strangest magical beings that Doctor Strange invoked over the years, as Munopor was actually a sentient world noted by hazy mist that surrounded it and disguised it. Munopor was also surrounded by 12 moons that likely increased its own mystic abilities. The powers that Munopor delivered to those who invoked it tended to be a bit more varied than most magical beings who typically tended to have specialties. The fourth one. By the ghosts of Gordu. By the angels of Akon. By the demons of Denak.
Demons of Danak?
Demons of Danak. Danak held a special place among magical beings as he was such a vile demon that the term Demons of Danak was often used as profanity. And a few of the times that Doctor Strange used that term, that was how it was intended. However, there were practical applications to that profanity, as Danak actually did have a bunch of demons that he would send to support magic users that invoked him. And finally...
How do you conjugate Danak?
Final say. By the rains of Rangor, by the snows of the Seraphim, by the winds of the Watum.
Oh, that's a toughie.
I'll take that as a compliment.
I'm going to say number 3, but I want to say all 3 of them.
I'm going to say 2.
I'll say 1.
Number 3 is the correct one. By the winds of the Watum. When Doctor Strange needs a powerful gust of wind during battle, he can always call upon the winds of Watum.
Yeah.
How convenient.
All right, well, that is quiz time, and that is our show. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week. Woo!